Let me tell you a little bit about me. I am from Texas. I am a Texan, and I am married. I have 3 children. I am a musician, and I play electric bass guitar. I am in a Christian band, and I am a Christian author. Got 2 books that are going to be released next year, Jordan's World and Mindfire. I'll be talking about them in a little bit. I have always been a writer. As far back as I can remember. Basically, I started making comics, my own comics, when I was 10 years old. I was into superheroes. I read superhero comics from Marvel and DC were the big ones at the time, and they still kind of are. But yeah, I read superhero comics, and I loved them so much. I tried to trace at first when I was 9 years old. That wasn't very fun, so I decided to actually start drawing them and writing them, and that led to me making my own original superhero comics. And I did that for a very long time. I did that between 1980 and 2000. And then when I got around to, actually starting about 2003, started getting into webcomics, and created a webcomic series called Due East, and did some other projects. And then in 2013, I decided to go ahead and try a novel for National Novel Writing Month, and that's in November every year. And I decided to take that first superhero comic that I started way back when I was 10 years old and take elements from it and turn that into a book. So I'll go into that in a little bit. Now, one thing that I want to make sure to make clear about Ambassador International is that these are all Christian writers. And so I wanted to go ahead and answer, what is Christian fiction to me? Because it can mean something different to everybody, even amongst writers. So for that, I want to talk a little bit about me, because I became Christian in 1996. I was very different before that. I don't even know where to begin on that. Those of you who knew me back in high school knew me either as the quiet guy, or the guy who was into heavy metal, or the guy who drew comics. But I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of anger issues. And so anyway, I decided, first of all, I fell in love with the woman who is my wife of 23 years, Angel. And we went through a lot to get married, but we got married, and we were expecting our first son back in 1995, and my wife ran into a witness for Christ, and my wife decided to give her life to Christ. Now, I didn't make any change right away, because that wasn't me at the time, but I saw the change in my wife's life, and over several months, it really had an impact on me. And so, interestingly enough, by January of '96, I was interested to go to a Bible study, and that made a big impact on me. But I actually, I got really sick. I nearly dehydrated to death after a bad case of the flu. And it was the first time that I had ever realized the possibility of dying for the first time in my life. And for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me personally, it was like looking into an abyss. I was dehydrated. They could not get fluids back into me, even at an ER center. My veins were in such bad shape that they were actually collapsing every time they tried to get fluids into me. So I was in bad shape. And so I realized that I could die for the first time. And I realized if I died, that I was not going to go to heaven. And so I called out to God in my thoughts. And I said, Lord, if you save me, I will go and I will give my life to you. And they managed to get a liter of fluid into me. And they offered for me to drink another liter of fluid because that's how dehydrated I was. And I did, and I held it down, and I was able to go. And so I made my decision the next day. And that changed everything for me. And so when it came time for me to start writing books, to write my first book, Mindfire, I wanted it to be a Christian book. But I handed over everything to the Lord and asked for His help in being able to write the books. So what ended up happening was extraordinary, because the book took my style of writing. I don't pull any punches in my books. And so there's bad things that happen, there's good things that happen, but it's a Christian book. The message is what comes through, but it doesn't beat you over the head. I never wanted to have something out there, because I'd seen examples of whether comics or books or movies, they meant well, but they just didn't come across right. And I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to be genuine. I wanted to put across a story that I would want to read. And so coming back to the point of what is Christian fiction to me, it's telling people about the hope that Christ offers, and that it can take many forms. But the truths concerning His death, burial, and resurrection are universal, and that He's still changing lives today. And to further that point, in real life, everyone has their own individual story. Me, you, everybody. And in fiction, it's the same. Everybody has their own individual story, at least in the stories that I write. And hi, Daphne. Hi, everybody. So anyway, it's got to be real, and I think that's true of any fiction. I mean, for a long time, I've said this before, and I will prove it. I used to only read Star Trek books. Nothing against them. I enjoy them. I live in that universe. I am a Trekkie. But when it came to writing my own books, I had to write my own stories. And so I never wanted to be a Star Trek writer, but I got a lot of inspiration from Trek and from that universe in terms of, how to implement action, how to do different things. I've got a lot of different sources over the years. And so, it's all about the story in the end. It's all about, giving you something good to read, hopefully. That's what I want. So I'm going to go a little bit into, both of those books now. And, of course, Facebook Live doesn't have any way of me seeing how much time's gone by. So if somebody could every once in a while let me know how much time's gone by, I would really appreciate it. Anyway, so first we're going to talk about Mindfire, because it was the first book. So with Mindfire, the lead character in it her name is Leah Hamilton. And she's 20 years old. And at the start of the book, she's just a perfectly normal person. She doesn't have any particular spiritual beliefs. She's going to college, she's working a job, and just trying to have a normal life. But what she doesn't know is that, thank you, Jackie. What she doesn't know is that her father used to be a superhero. He's not a superhero anymore, but he used to be a superhero. And then just to make things a little more interesting, her mother, who's not a part of her life, but her mother is a supervillain. And so it makes things interesting because the Leia's father and stepmother have raised her and hadn't told her these things yet. Not to keep it from her, but just to wait until it seemed like she was ready. Of course, life doesn't work like that, and things just kind of, spin the way they're going to spin. And so there's really two stories in one in Mindfire, because there's a story set 20 years in the past with this superhero team called the R-Men. Not R like the letter R, but A-R. And no relation to the X-Men, not imitating them in any way, but that's just what I named the team back in 1980. And so it tells about them and the reason why they as a team disbanded. Something bad happened, and it affected all of them. And so there's that story, which also ties into how Leah was conceived. And then there's the story in the present with Leia. And so it's interesting just to show how the past influences the present with these characters. And it's really all about Leia coming to a crossroads of her life, and what is she going to do about it? You do your best to rely on yourself, but what happens when that's not good enough? And so the story answers that. It's a redemption story, and not only for Leia, but for other characters as well. And I had a really good time making this story. I'm proud of it. I'm proud that I was able to do it within the 30 days of National Novel Writing Month. And I actually wrote the first draft in 3 weeks. Of course, that's the first draft. It took over 2 years to refine it and edit it before it was even manuscript ready in any way. But I'm proud of the story that it is, because it's a hopeful story, but I think for what it is, it's realistic. And I think that comes through. You feel the struggles of the different characters. Nobody's perfect in this. They're all trying to figure out how to make it. And so I enjoy that a great deal about that. And I hope you do too. Now, Jordan's World is completely different. Jordan's World, I started it from scratch. No past influences. That was on purpose. I wanted to really go ahead and just jump into the world of writing. And so at first I started off that Jordan's World kind of felt like a fantasy novel to me. But it ended up kind of developing into a science fantasy. And so what you got with Jordan is the lead character. It's the start of the story. She's 17 years old. She and her mother are abducted by aliens, extraterrestrials, and they are taken to an Earth-like world somewhere far away in a binary star system and left there by the aliens. And they're adopted basically by a nearby friendly tribe, but they have to learn everything from scratch. They have to learn the language of these people. They have to learn the culture. They have to learn how to adapt to the environment and everything on this world. And it takes the better part of 4 years. And all this happens before the very first chapter. There's a prologue where this is gone into more detail. And but basically with Jordan, though Jordan is trying to adapt to life on this world, she gets an opportunity to possibly find the aliens that brought her and her mother there, and at the very least find out why they did, what their whole goal was. And then secondly, there's a possibility of going home. But the conflict in there is that, which life does she want? She's got the potential for a good life on this other world called Algorand. Or is her life back on Earth with the rest of her family? And so we get to see this. We get to see and follow what happens with Jordan. And some other extraordinary circumstances happen. But one of the points that I really wanted to make with Jordan's world, and again, not trying to bang anybody over the head with this point, but what comes through is a point about God, which is that, in my view at least, God is the God of all creation, not just Earth. And so this shows that. But it's interesting the way it came about, and it's interesting how things happen and develop. And I don't want to give spoilers for it. It would be very easy to do. But it's an exciting book. And but just it's in a different way, because this isn't superhero. There's nothing superhero about Jordan's world, but it's got action, it's got suspense, it's got twists. My books have twists. I don't know about you, but I like when books do things that are unexpected. When you think you're heading this way and you end up taking a detour where you never expected to, and it's amazing. Daphne's got a question. She says, she says that it seems to have Native American, African tribal influences. Yes, because on Algorand, one of the things that I really enjoyed about doing Jordan's world is that there's virtually no technology on this world, and contrasting that with Earth, where we're all about technology. And I'm not an environmentalist, I'm not anything like that, but it was just really neat to show the differences and how, when you're away from technology, how that impacts on you when when you look at the differences and how people get accustomed to things. And maybe someone else would have a completely different viewpoint of it, but we're seeing Jordan's, and I think you're going to like that. I think you're going to like Jordan as a character, and obviously she's not the only character in the book, but again, I don't want to give too many spoilers. It's but like I said, these are both coming out next summer, so you get a chance to see both of them. Don't have exact dates yet, I'm sorry. As we get closer to the time, I'll be able to say more about that, and when we get the covers, we'll do the cover reveals and everything like that. And I'm really excited about these, and I hope that you are too, because they're not they're not what you might expect from these genres. And it's only recently that that Christian books have headed into this territory beyond just the, a simple fantasy story or what like. But it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be a writer. And I'm all about characterization. And although I don't write romance, there are elements of romance in my stories. And so I think you'll enjoy that as well.